I was so ashamed because I couldn't talk like other people. I'm a Scatman. I'm a Scatman. I'm a Scatman.
¿Qué tal, amigas y amigos? Esta es la primera edición de Entre Té y Voces. Esta entrega va para largo. El día de hoy hablaremos de una persona muy importante, por lo menos para el canal. Y aunque ya lo diga el título, me da mucho gusto decirles que hoy hablaremos de...
I'm a Scatman.
Por supuesto, me refiero a Scatman John. Todas y todos en algún punto hemos escuchado su canción Scatman. Sin embargo, más allá de ser una canción noventera y de ser muy pegadiza, tiene un gran trasfondo. Aunque hablar sobre Scatman John puede ser complicado por la poca información que hay sobre él. Afortunadamente cuento con una amiga que resulta ser la biógrafa oficial de Scatman John, y me da mucho gusto recibir a Gina Waggott, amiga, autora y biógrafa de John. So, Gina, how are you today?
I am great. Thank you for asking. Very happy to be here.
Great to know, Gina. Before we start, I just want to say that you are actually the first person that I interview, or at least what I try to speak in English. So thank you so much for this.
Well, I'm honored that I'm the first one. It's a shame I'm not actually at home right now. I'm traveling. Otherwise, normally there is a Scatman Gold Award behind me in my office at home, but sadly you can't see that because I'm traveling. So you'll have to look at my Airbnb instead.
Well, that's something to collect, isn't it? Anyways, let's start with the most basic thing to ask to anyone. Who are you?
Well, my name is Gina Waggott. I am a person who stutters, like Scatman John, except my stuttering is more like a freezing. It's a little bit different to what people would normally expect with stuttering. So that's a big part of who I am. I'm an author and a writer, and besides that, I also worked in television for a very long time, mostly for the BBC. So I have a broadcasting background, and as you know, I am a huge fan of John Larkin, Scatman John.
People like Scatman.
Oh yeah, that's right. You have talked to John, you have met the man himself back in the 19th. And from what I have seen in your website, you have worked for the BBC, that's also right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but you also climbed the Everest at one point, right?
Yes, my boyfriend, my partner, is a climber and a mountaineer. So I went to Everest with him about 15 years ago. That was really fun. That was for like a private film that we were filming. But yeah, he's a TV producer and director, and also an author. So we mostly work remotely, so we can work anywhere. So we tend to go to different places. So right now I'm in Panama for Christmas and New Year, and my birthday, which was yesterday. So there you go. We do travel a lot.
Oh well, happy birthday, Gina. And I hope that you can enjoy Panama because it's a beautiful country. And I hope that Latin America can give you the best for both of you. And I don't know how cold England is on this day, so hey, it's a great escape to go to a more warmer place like Panama.
Yeah, thank you. Really enjoying it. It's not my first time in Latin America. I really love Latin America. And yeah, England is cold and rainy. So in the winter, it's good to escape. So here we are.
Alright, so you have also talked about, or at least publicly, about your childhood and your teenage period with life as a person that stutters, or like other people tend to call it, having a speech impediment. Do you wanna talk about it?
Yeah, it's something we're trying not to use the word impediment anymore, because this stuttering community are trying to change some of the language that is used around stuttering, but it's still, people still use these terms, but in Britain we call it stammering instead, but it's the same thing. And I started stuttering, which is always a difficult word to say for me, which is, why I can't say the word stuttering. But yeah, it started when I was about 6 years old, which is a little bit late. And because it was quite mild, and it was the characteristics of it was more the freezing, like the silent blocks, I didn't get the help that I perhaps should have done. It wasn't really recognized as a stutter because I wasn't going stutter. And so it was kind of just left alone, and it really had a very negative effect on my self-esteem. I was a shy kid anyway, and it just it wasn't very good for my mental health, put it that way. And so by the time I was a teenager, I had learned to hide it by changing words and by avoiding certain situations. So I was very introverted, I was very shy, I was quite lonely. I didn't have that many friends. So here I am, like this kid with this problem, and I felt very alone with it until, of course, then along comes Scatman John talking about it publicly. And I don't know if I'm jumping ahead here for what you want to ask, but I remember the first time I heard that song and I heard the lyrics talking about stuttering, I was amazed. I just thought, this is incredible.
Everybody stutters one way or the other, so check out my message to you. As a matter of fact, don't let nothing hold you back. If the Scatman can do it, so can you. Everybody's thinking that the Scatman stutters, but doesn't never stutter when he sings. Well, what you don't know, I'm going to tell you right now that the stutter and the scat is the same thing. Yo, I'm the Scatman.
this man is talking to me and people like me. And it was amazing. And that's how this thing started.
Well, that's fantastic, Gina. I mean, when I was curious about stuttering and people that stutters, I found out that in England actually they call it stammering, and it made me confused because I was like, did I, after all of these years, say it wrong? Because they are two different words, but they share the same meaning. But yeah, but now that you have talked about your childhood and everything that you have passed only because you are someone that stutters, I would like to ask to you, why would you decide that it was time to write a book about John and not anyone else but you?
Well, that's a good question. Because I knew John, I was very lucky. Like you say, not many people did get to know him. Certainly not many fans, although he was very good at communicating with fans when he could. He and I had a very intense but distant in location relationship. And I wrote to him when I was about 15 or 16, and by that time my mental health had taken a very deep dive. I was not in a good place. And I found his email address. I mean, this was the 90s. People used to put their email addresses on like directory sites, and John had filled in one of these directory sites on AOL. And I wrote to this address. I thought it was a joke. I thought some fan had filled in the directory or something, but it was actually him. And we started a correspondence for like 2-3 years. And to put it in a nutshell, John saved my life. I don't say that lightly. He was like a mentor, like a therapist, and a good friend. He just came along at the right time for me in my life, and he enjoyed mentoring me, and I, for whatever reason, and I still don't know why, I became his little project, if you like. I think because we started talking to each other when the whole Scatman thing was slightly declining, so he wasn't so busy. But anyway, long story short, all these years later, after John died, I kept in touch with Judy, his wife, who was also very, very good at keeping in touch with the fan community. And she passed away in 2023, a couple of years ago. And round about that time, I thought about writing a book, because I had written bits of one. I had talked to Judy about it before, and then unfortunately she got sick. And when she died, it was like a trigger. And I thought, if I don't keep all this information that I had, and I had a lot, if I don't do something with this, John's story is going to be lost forever. And I don't want that. I wanted people to know the real man and who he was, and what he did. And so I decided I was going to write his biography. Unfortunately, this wasn't something I could do on my own. I interviewed more than 100 people for the book, and I found everybody I possibly could. It took me 3 years altogether. I just wanted to do the best possible job to put John's life down on paper. So the family, the Larkin family, and John's stepson, Lee Newman, was extremely helpful. He is Judy's son and John's stepson, and also the record label, Iceberg Records, and Manfred and Meta Zaringer, who run it. They were all extremely helpful, and I couldn't have done this without any of them. Same goes for anybody who worked with John, was also really helpful. Ingo Kais, Tony Catania, Kai Maston, everybody who ever worked with him, thankfully, spoke to me. And I started constructing this thing. And the main reason I wanted to write a book is just to preserve John's story for the next generation, because his message is still there for anybody who wants to hear it. So I hope that answers the question. It was a bit long.
Oh, don't worry, Gina. That was perfect. But yeah, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but Judy herself created the current Scatman Facebook page. And from what I have seen, she really came in contact with John's fans over there between maybe it was 2010 or 2011, but she kept uploading or sharing photos of John and some unseen clips, which was fantastic at that time. But I would also like to ask you, how hard was it for you to collect any information about John, especially since we are talking about the 90s? And we might know that the internet back then was just starting, or at least in a commercial way. You know, people might have used the internet wherever in the Netscape navigator, on their Power Macintoshes, or in the Macintosh Performance, or using a copy of Windows 95. And also, how hard was it for you to find a publisher that was interested in your project?
Yeah, good question. I had a lot of stuff in the 90s, like you said, when it was, because the internet was kind of, or the World Wide Web was kind of in its infancy, it was quite difficult to get information on John. There was not a lot online. In fact, in the end, I was running the official website after a guy called Elston Trinidad had like the official Scatman site, and then we merged it with mine to create the website, and everything that I knew was more or less put on there, but it was still not very much. In the 90s, I was collecting things with my good friend Jonathan Dolan, who I think some people know. And we had an old stuff on VHS tapes and just used to post that to each other. We didn't put it online until YouTube arrived, and then we started seeing all the videos that we had were put online. And so, no, there wasn't very much information. I had a lot of stuff, and after John died, I was so sad and so depressed about it. I put it all into storage. I gave it to Jonathan, in fact. He's still got all my Scatman stuff because I travel. He keeps hold of it. And for years, I didn't want to look at it because it was too painful for me. It took me a long time to get over John's death. But then when Judy and I were talking, maybe around 2010, you're correct. She did create the Facebook page, and she used to post for fans on that. And that was exactly the kind of person Judy was. She wanted to continue John's message. And so because all of this stuff was before the internet, for the book, I had to travel to Denmark, to Iceberg Records, and to Los Angeles, to John and Judy's archive, which Lee very kindly let me look through. I mean, there were boxes and boxes of faxes, you know, and tapes and things that were never digitized. And over in Europe, again, Iceberg let me look at all their photographs and magazine cuttings and files, and none of this was digital. So I had to make my own archive and use it for the book, and it was pretty difficult, and that's why it took 3 years, like I said, a heck of a lot of my savings to travel around the world and do this. And you asked about finding a publisher. Well, it's interesting because my editor, Michael Tan, who bought this book, he had not heard of Scatman John before, I think. But this story, he said, was just so good that it was an obvious thing for him to take a gamble on, because it's about a 90s pop star, sure, but it's also about being who you really are and not hiding parts of yourself, and someone who is middle-aged, like John was 52 when he became famous. So it's an underdog story, and it's about stuttering is recognized as a disability. It's a neurodivergence. The conversation about these things is much better now in 2025 than it was back in the 90s. And it's really about overcoming shame and getting a second chance, and then what you do with that second chance. And so that's why they bought the book, and not necessarily because it was about Scatman John, but because of all the things that John means, especially now, to people. So yeah, that's why. I'm very lucky. I know it's really hard to get a book published, but yeah, I'm very lucky that they took it.
So, your book's name is Scatman John, the remarkable story of the world's unlikeliest pop star, due to release on February 5. Such an amazing title, I must say, but for many fans that already know about John, or at least from what we currently have online about him, what can we expect to learn about John coming from your book?
Well, like I said, a lot of John's life is not known. There's quite a short Wikipedia on him, as I'm sure most people have read, and even if you don't know who John is, and you don't even have to like Scatman John's music to read this particular book, because the Scatman era is only the second half of it. The first half of it is about a man who was so ashamed of his speech disability that he just tried to destroy himself. And of course, John grew up in the 50s, and people were not as tolerant as they are now. And he had a lot of issues, and I can't give away what's in the book, unfortunately, but John had a lot to deal with. He always called his childhood turbulent, but that's an understatement. It was terrible. And how he somehow managed to, of course, he fell into addiction and jazz piano. And I wish more people knew about John's jazz career. He was an exceptional jazz piano player and a deeply spiritual man as well. And he combined the two, and his early stuff is just really fantastic. So it's about, you know, a man who tried to destroy himself, and he played jazz and was exceptional, and yet didn't want to speak because of his stuttering, and that he managed to overcome the shame behind it, and then in middle age become a pop star. It's just the subtitle of the book is like the remarkable story of the world's unlikeliest pop star, and it really is. He really was the unlikeliest pop star, and it really is a remarkable story. And so what people would find in the book is not necessarily like a bunch of 90s nostalgia, but a human story. And that's what I would say to people that they would find in the book. I hope that answers your question.
Oh yeah. John's career as a pianist is criminally underrated. And despite that, we have some clips on YouTube when he plays songs like Route 66 and some others like Springtime. It's still really underrated because his ability to play the piano is such fantastic, so wonderful. Many people at least love his first single, Scatman's Hit Papa Para Pop, but man, he was such a wonderful pianist. And of course, he was a great guy who could scat like no other. But besides that, how would you think that he would react that you were writing a book about him? I would say that he will be shocked. Put his left or right hand on his chest and say, "Are you really making a book about me?"
I think you're right. I think you're spot on about that. You'd say, "You're doing this for me?" He would be delighted, I think, and a little bit surprised because he was always a modest man. But he did start writing his own life story. He did start writing his autobiography, which he didn't finish. In fact, there was so little of it. It didn't even cover the Scatman years because he was too busy being Scatman to write about Scatman. But there were little bits of notes that he had written, and some of those are in the book. So he did recognize that he had a good life story that probably should be in a book. I think he tried to get some people interested in 1999, but there's not enough material. Somebody needed to come along and put together the whole story, so I did that. But yeah, he would be amazed and delighted if he was around. Maybe he still is around. I like to feel that there's a good vibe, surrounding this project. So I don't know. I do know that he felt that only a person who stutters could write such a book, and that's when I realized that it probably had to be me instead of some other journalist or writer. And because I had the personal connection to him as well, so that's why. Interesting, you mentioned there's not much of his jazz recordings. Well, I can tell you something, and I don't think this has been mentioned publicly yet, but you can put it on your channel. Just after the book, there's going to be an EP released of some of John's earliest recordings. I think they're from 1978 or so. It will be 4 tracks. and I've heard them, and they're exceptionally good. I mean, I know I'm biased, but there are a couple of tracks on there that are really good, and it's absolutely pure sort of John Larkin stuff. It's the jazz side and the spiritual side, not the Scatman and techno side. And a couple of the tracks are like early versions of some songs that were on the John Larkin album. This came about because in my interviews, I was speaking to a bass player who used to play with John, and he had these tapes. His name is Duke. I don't know if he's listening to this, but shout out to Duke. And after a couple of years, we've managed to put together a release, and it will come out just after the book. So that's some news.
That's some really good news, Gina. Thank you so much for sharing it, because I'm pretty sure that many people that are listening to us are really excited. And I say that because I am. But how important has been to you, or how important it is to you, to help other people that maybe they have the same fears that you once had, or as John did, as he usually explained in some interviews? How important is to you to help anyone that stuttering represents something so difficult, so unappealing? And by that I mean that they could get discriminated, kids will be a target to get bullied. How can your book, and by that how can John's life and your own experience, can help anyone on that situation?
Yeah, that was besides wanting to preserve John's story, that was my main reason also for writing such a book, in case it helps people. That is what John would want, that is what I want. And in order to do that, I didn't cover up the bad bits, let's put it that way. John's childhood was things that no child should have to go through. And he wrote pieces of this down, so we know that he wanted it eventually to be made public. He came very close to saying things about it once or twice in interviews, and it also appeared in some lyrics, like there's a line in Let It Go, which is, I'm holding on to secrets that are too hard to see. And I think he's referring to his childhood in that. In fact, I know he is. And I think what might surprise people about the book is that it's very heavy. It is very heavy. It really should have, I don't know if the publisher's going to give it a trigger warning, but maybe it should have a trigger warning. And also his teenage years and the drugs he was a mess. And there's reasons he was a mess. But he also was not, I mean, we think of Scatman John as like a smiley, happy guy, and he was in the end. He had changed, and it is possible to change, but before that he was a deeply wounded man who, he did some not very nice things. He also dealt drugs. He didn't just take drugs, he was a drug dealer, which is one of the things that hasn't really been made public before. He had a difficult life. He said his life wasn't easy, and he said he was not a saint. And I think it's important that John was always about telling the truth, and if I covered that stuff up in the book. It wouldn't be what John would want. He would want everything out there for people to see, so he could encourage people, whether it's the stuttering nearly destroyed his life, and it nearly destroyed mine. And so if he can do it, so can you, was this whole thing. So if somebody reads this book and they stutter, or they have another disability, or you have anything different about you, or if you are struggling with addiction or self-esteem or anything like that, I hope that people can see themselves in the book and in John's experience and in my experience, and know that things can change and things can get better, you know. And that was John's whole ethos. It was all his lyrics say the same thing, which is be good to yourself, because you're all you've got. And I really think that the book shows that it doesn't just, the story is not just about a man who suddenly became a pop star. He had to fight to overcome a lot of stuff. And yes, it's very dark and it's very intense, but I really hope that the truth of it helps people, if you see what I mean by that.
Oh, absolutely, Gina, you are correct once again, because we know that John really did a lot of interviews in Japan, in Europe, and he also, he continued composing songs back in LA at his home. But that makes me question how much of free time did John really have, especially in those days when the Scatman was highly demanded for tours and concerts.
The short answer is he didn't have any spare time, and it's started to wear him down, because after the first and second singles were such a success, and the album, he used to have to be physically present to do interviews, because there was no Zoom like this, and you know, the internet couldn't handle remote interviews yet. So if it wasn't a long distance phone call, he had to physically show up to the TV stations or to the radio or whatever. And I remember reading, like, when he was in Japan, in 2 weeks he'd done 50 interviews, something like that. And he did have to learn to say no, because he wasn't a very well man. Even when he became Scatman, he already had health problems. It just, you know, the schedule probably made them worse, but it was the expected schedule of a pop star then. But like you said, he's 52 and he's an ex-drug addict. His body was not healthy, and so he struggled, but he kept doing it and doing it and doing it, because he wanted to spread the message, and he thought, I've got one chance. And he knew that the kind of music he was making would probably not have a very long life, like the whole Eurodance techno thing. He knew that you would have some big hits and then probably not have that success over many years. So when he got success, he went for it. He really just wanted to get the message out there and reach as many kids as he could. And, you know, it wasn't great for his health. So he didn't have much time to write songs. I think this second album was done in a bit of a hurry. The first album was done in a hurry, actually. There's never enough time. But later, when John was at home, and certainly when I used to like call him on the phone or write to him, he was composing all the time that he was at home. But I was mostly playing jazz. That's what he preferred to do. He had a quintet that he had. Every Sunday his friends would come around and he would play jazz in his house, so he enjoyed that. But like, for example, Can You Hear Me took like 18 months, something like that. He started it before he got ill, and he just didn't have time to finish it, and then he got sick, and then he thought he better finish it. Oh, the reason that took so long to come out is that It was given, John gave it to me 6 weeks before he died. He gave me the CDR, which is the picture on Discogs. I thought it was lost. I didn't know I still had it. And then when I started writing the book 3 years ago, I went into my storage and I found the CDR, and I gave it to Iceberg to release. And then eventually they did. So that's the reason why there was such a long gap. As soon as I found it, I handed it over. But maybe it's just the right time for it to come out with the world being in the situation it's in right now. Maybe it was needed. I don't know, but I'm happy it's out there now and that people can hear it.
Oh wow, that's good, Gina. Because you have been helping Iceberg with the current Scatman Facebook and Instagram accounts, and even so that at one point those accounts were not used, people still keep wanting more about John. You know, those YouTube videos from 2005 or 2006, one way or another, were still featuring John. And by that, I mean, how has been the feedback?
The feedback has been fantastic. I'm very grateful to Iceberg, who kind of allow me to go on there and post stuff, because I said to them, listen, I've done all this research for the book, why don't I put some of it online? And the reason the official website came back is that the domain was dropped by whoever had stolen it 20 years ago. It got taken over as like spam years ago, and that was my fault because I was running it, but I was a student at the time, and I think I just couldn't keep it going, and somebody bought it and took it over. But about 2022 or so, I saw it had dropped, and I snatched it up again, and that's what started the whole online thing. But Iceberg are very good. They protect John's legacy. They get a lot of requests for his music, and they keep the quality high. You know, they don't just let anybody use it. And I have a very good working relationship with them, where we are just trying to preserve John's legacy and keep it going. And the response from the fans has been fantastic. We get, what's really sweet, and I love this, is that we get the same kind of letters that I used to get on the website in 1999 and 2000 saying, you know, my son stutters and he feels seen for the first time, or you know, I listened to John's songs and he got me through a very hard time in my life. And that really touches me. It makes it all worthwhile, because that's what it's for. That's what John's music was for. Try not to get emotional talking about this, but yeah, I'm honored that I can somehow continue the legacy in a small way by doing the online stuff. So there you go.
Well, that's so sweet, Gina. It's good. It's really neat that people send you stuff about how John was so important in their lives. And I find that really interesting because, as you did back in those days, you emailed John. And I'm pretty sure that many people did the same. And honestly, it's great to know that. But this is my 2 cents. I feel that there was a gap where there wasn't anything coming from Iceberg about Scatman. I know that the man died in 1999, and aside from some compilations, there was nothing officially. The official YouTube account was created at least in the mid 2010s. And some people were posting stuff about John in the mid 2000s. Stuff on YouTube, on Nico Video, Doga, and on other platforms like Newgrounds. So, do you think there's a reason why there was such a gap?
I think there was a gap between after John died, everybody was devastated, and nobody, of course, was more devastated than Judy. And I think she left it alone as well for years because it was too painful. For me, the same reason. And so by the time John became popular on YouTube in the early 2000s, I was only very loosely following it. Judy was only very loosely following it. I think Iceberg Records were focusing on their artists who were alive, which you can imagine as a excuse me, as a business priority. That's what you would expect them to do, and nobody really wanted to license the music in the same way that they do now. So the whole thing kind of just went a bit flat until I remember there was like some meme sites, some Super Mario stuff and other videos. And then some of the old VHS tapes started to appear on YouTube, and the interest was slowly going back up again. And I was kind of loosely aware of it, but by then the website had been taken over by some spammers, and I couldn't get it back. It was just kind of left alone, partly because it was very painful for some of us. But I think what happened is that people started to be interested in the music again because of YouTube and because of memes, and because I think the first big synchronization song, or interpolation they're called, was the Lil Wayne Got a Lotta, which was a big artist who was interested in John again, and that kind of kick-started the whole revival, this Scatman revival. And we were not really doing much social media. I know John Dolan has his own channel, and there are other channels like yours, but yeah, it's difficult to describe why it took so long. And I'm just glad that now everything is coming back, and the interest is coming back, and I can help with that. It just wasn't we just didn't think that people were interested in Scatman anymore. I mean, that's hard to believe. I mean, I always was, and I knew there were probably other people out there, but I couldn't reach them until social media took off. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question about why things were a bit slow and why they're bigger now. But I'm very happy that this is the way around that it has gone. Because I mean, most 90s stars, they had a big couple of hits in the 90s, and then their reputation has just gone like this, downwards, and they don't have this revival. John has a revival, especially in America, which is weird because he was never a hit there, and I think it's because of his lyrics, actually, because he was singing in English, speaking in English, and he had a lot of good things to say that are now relevant to today's society. So I think that's why. It's just my theory. I don't know if it's right. Does that answer your question? I hope so.
Yes, Gina, you answer very good. This has been a very lengthy chat, and I thank you so much for this. So I wanna end this with just one last question, and that will be, where's this Scatman?
I'm Scatman, but only on Facebook. That's funny. When when people started writing, "Where's the Scatman?" I just wrote, "I'm the Scatman" for a joke. But then once I started it, I now cannot stop. So keep it coming. It's funny. It's fun. John would love it.
Well, that will be it, Gina. Thank you so much for joining here. I'm sure that both John and Judy will be extremely happy for you for making this important goal. And I wish you the best and good luck.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. And yeah, I hope the book is a testament to what they both tried to achieve and their relationship as well, which was wonderful. And so I think it's a good way to honor them both. And I hope that more people find John through the book. I really do. I think there's so much more to him than a couple of hits in the 90s. So yeah, looking forward to it. And thank you for having me on your channel. I enjoy your channel. I watch it a lot. And it's great to be part of it. Thank you.
Bueno, amigas y amigos, eso sería todo. Si desean saber más sobre el libro de Gina, pueden entrar a sus redes sociales o las redes oficiales de Scatman John. Muchas gracias por vernos y hasta la próxima.